Welcome to AMP's webinar on working anywhere. You're not getting your money's worth from Office 365 subscription. We've recorded this on January 13th, 2021. A little note about AMP before we begin. AMP is a business and technology consultancy, and we help small and medium businesses implement a proven IT strategy that aligns with your goals. And by doing so, we remove all of your IT challenges so that you can focus on better serving your customers and growing your business. We find our clients achieve 4 times more value and productivity from their IT investments by letting us implement our proven strategy. But that's not why you're here today. Let's get going with Office 365 and Microsoft 365. You're not getting your money's worth. Typically, when we meet a new prospect, we find that everyone that has an Office 365 subscription typically is only using the classic Office apps, Outlook, Excel, Word, and so forth. And they haven't implemented anything else that's available to them within what they're subscribing to. So today we're going to kind of talk about what are you missing out on? You're paying for all this software, but you're not using it. Could any of this additional software that you're already paying for add any value and help you grow your business? The first thing to note is that many of our prospects are renting Office 365 software. And about 2 years ago, Microsoft came out with Microsoft 365 subscriptions. And the Microsoft 365 subscriptions offer much more value and many more applications, typically for the same price you're paying for your original Office 365 subscription. Here's a periodic table of all of the Microsoft 365 applications that get bundled into typical subscriptions. And it's amazing here how much software value there is hidden in here. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So the first thing we're going to talk about is implementing Microsoft Teams. So what's Microsoft Teams? Microsoft Teams is a fabulous program that typically we never see deployed. And Microsoft Teams essentially provides a single pane of glass where you can run your business from. And if you're a CEO right now, and you're often wondering, how are my employees doing? Are my employees working from home right now? Are they communicating well with their coworkers? Microsoft Teams solves that problem. And on the screen here, you can see that Microsoft Teams automatically gives you a voice and video conferencing inside the application. You don't pay an extra penny for it. Unlike Slack or WebEx, competing products, even Zoom, you have to pay for those products. And Microsoft Teams, if you're just talking to people within your own company, they could be working from anywhere, from their home, a coffee shop, or even in the office. Some people in the office, they all can communicate like you can see on the screen here in beautiful color fidelity and great audio quality. And all you need is a laptop or a PC that's got a camera on it and decent internet. Another thing that comes with Teams is company chat and integrated messaging. The chat allows you to chat one-on-one privately with another employee, or you can group chat with a group of people that all work together in a department, for instance. They have an opportunity to kind of chat back and forth and ask questions. It's very, very useful. Here's an example of what chat looks like for a team. In this case, we've highlighted the marketing team. And you can see how multiple people can hop in and make conversations about specific items. And it's very easy to use and requires literally no training to get going. You can also display corporate data, and at AMP here we have a number of key performance indicators, KPIs, on how many tickets should an engineer be closing in a day? How quickly are we responding to the tickets? What's our customer sat look like by engineer? We collect all this data and we can show it on a screen much like this so everyone can stack rank one another and see how they're doing compared to their team. Another great tool is if you're a CEO, you might often be wondering, hey, now that all my employees are working from home, are they truly working? Are they at their desks? Are they doing work? Or, are they in the kitchen right now having a 2 hour lunch rather than an hour long lunch? And you can see here, you can create over on the right employee cards, if you will. And on these cards, with a picture of the employee, what their role is in the company, we also can show here something called presence. And presence allows you to hop on this screen and see, is an employee at his PC? Are they working? Or if they've left their PC, how long have they been gone from their PC? You can also see if they're on a phone call. Maybe they're in a meeting. You can also see if they're actually presenting in a meeting. So this presence information is, for me, as a CEO, it really makes it much easier for me to take a look at how's everyone doing, what are they doing, and what's going on. And before I would call someone, I can go to this screen and see if they're already talking to someone else, so I won't interrupt them. So there's great value with how Teams is set up here. So I think when we think about Teams, I'd love to tell you a story, and this is a personal story. None of us really planned for the pandemic, and certainly did not see it coming. Once the pandemic hit, and I'm being told by our governor that we have to shut down our businesses, nobody can come to the office anymore. I was quite literally in a panic. How am I going to deliver IT services? How are we going to keep the business running? With everyone working from their home. IT support, I think, is kind of a team sport. One engineer is having a problem. Someone down a cubicle row could hear that problem and go to them and have an answer and help them solve the problem. So for me, I was really petrified with the thought that we're moving everyone home and how is this really going to work out? And we had already implemented Teams as a company. We weren't really actively using it, but it was on the laptops and ready to go. And so we brought it in, and immediately when everyone went home, we implemented Teams chats for the server desktop team, for our infrastructure team, for the management team. And I felt instantly at ease watching everyone as they would IM one another with questions about a customer. Hey, is this customer server turned on or off? Why is this server turned off? And I could see they were interacting very quickly and efficiently with one another. I could come over here to the call screen and see, in fact, everyone showed up for work at 8:30. Everyone had green lights. Everybody was working, and it really kind of calmed me down on how things were going to go. And then, of course, we collect data on our ticketing and how many tickets get closed. And the truth is, and I found this out over time, that the Teams was so effective in helping our company collaborate remotely. The number of meetings that were called was up. They were all, we have a saying in our company that everyone has to have their camera on whenever they're in a meeting, even if our customers don't turn their cameras on. And I could see everyone. I could see everybody was engaged. For me, it was just a huge relief being able to kind of monitor what was going on in the business. So if you right now, as a CEO, are really uncomfortable and still have that uneasy feeling, hey, is everyone working at home? Is everyone effectively working at home? Do I have some employees more engaged than others? Or are teams in my company, are they easily communicating to one another and getting answers taken care of? So productivity stays high. If you're worried about these kinds of things, or you're worried because everyone's at home, no one sees one another, you don't have any video conferencing software, and you feel like your culture is being damaged because nobody sees everyone anymore. Teams, at least for me, was a godsend, and it was really interesting. The minute the pandemic hit in March, Microsoft said that they had about 3 years of growth in 3 months. That was the level of adoption that took place with Teams. So at AMP here, we can help you get Teams going. You're already paying for it. I would tell you it's perhaps one of the most important pieces of software Microsoft has ever written. Everything that you do in your business can flow through Teams here, right here on this screen. My millennial employees love it, and I think you would too. And it just solves a lot of business problems and concerns. All right, let's move on to the next opportunity to get additional money's worth out of Office 365. And that's migrating your email exchange server. And we find many customers or prospects when we first meet up with them, they're either running Exchange on-premise, and that means like every 5 years they're buying a new server. That means once that server is bought, they have to pay someone to implement Exchange and set it all up. They have to buy a new operating system. They have to spend money for backups. And then, of course, they have to patch it and maintain it. It's kind of, frankly, a big hassle. It's very expensive. And, every 4 or 5 years, you're buying new software and you're buying a new server. It's not cheap to run a server these days. They're electric hogs. They run hot. You got to cool them. And it's kind of a hassle. And what's scary is that Exchange is becoming like one of those targeted applications on-prem that can be an entryway for ransomware. So right now, if you're a company that still has an Exchange server on-prem, or maybe you're a company that you've adopted a free Google Gmail email addresses, or maybe you're hosting your email off-site, paying a third party to do it. Most people don't realize is when they have Office 365 or Microsoft 365 subscriptions, it's included is Exchange Online. So we can literally migrate all of your email from on-premise or from a third party right up in the Microsoft Exchange Online. It's hosted in their Azure cloud. And when you do that, it's Microsoft that worries about taking care of Exchange. It's Microsoft that does the upgrade. It's Microsoft servers that you're running on. And you don't have to pay a penny extra. So this is a great way to save a ton of money over 3 or 4 years by avoiding having to do those server and software upgrades. Fabulous value included here. And what's interesting, and we'll get into this in our security section, is Exchange Online, when run in Azure on Microsoft servers, has a far greater level of security control that we can turn on that does not exist and is not available with their on-prem servers. So this is a great opportunity. What's kind of neat about this is that you pay A&P, we migrate you once, it's a one-time project bill, and you never look back. Your mail from that point on is running in Microsoft's data center, and you can be carefree. No more backup software to worry about. No more managed services to worry about. It's an absolute no-brainer to pursue. The next thing in the process of contemplating, hey, I've purchased Office 365 or Microsoft 365, is the same thing occurs with your file server. Every couple of years you have to buy a new file server. You replace that file server. You have to buy a new copy of Microsoft operating system to run on the file server. And then, of course, the implementer turns on your files, migrates your files over onto that file server. The print drivers, print servers, your domain controller, Active Directory, all the stuff that runs under the covers in Microsoft, all of that stuff gets upgraded every 4 or 5 years with a brand new server. And it's a recurring charge, and it's kind of inefficient. And by moving to OneDrive and SharePoint, it's just like Exchange Online. SharePoint Online is essentially a file server that Microsoft runs for you up in the Azure cloud. It runs on their equipment, it runs on their software. You're never buying another file server, you're never paying A&P to upgrade you again, and you literally save thousands of dollars, let alone your data is far more secure and in a more professionally run data center than you could ever afford to operate. So this is a wonderful opportunity as well, and much like Exchange, you do it once and then you're done forever. You never have to migrate to the cloud 2 times. Once all your data is up there, it just lives up there and grows in that location. Microsoft worries about the backups. Microsoft worries about the bandwidth. Microsoft worries about upgrading the servers and hardware. You don't have a care in the world again about it. And again, you don't pay a penny extra to take advantage of this service. It's a great opportunity. I have a story here too. It's kind of a sad story, but it's a relevant story if you're a CEO and something to think about. One of our clients is in an industry where they have a very aggressive, larger competitor trying to take them out, and they're doing it in a couple of ways. The first way is they're going after my clients' employees one by one and offering them more money to come over. And then when they come over, hey, bring some data along with you, maybe a spreadsheet or two on how you're doing your bidding. And so not only are they losing their best employees as they get picked off one by one, but they're also worried that some of their company data is leaving and getting out of the building. And one of the cool things about SharePoint Online is that we've been able to do for this customer is literally lock their data down. And I'll give you an example. Typically, most companies, and we do here at A&P, we allow our employees to receive their A&P email on their cell phones. Yeah, of course on their corporate laptop too, but we let them receive email on their cell phones. And if an employee were ever to leave us, I can push a button and literally in 30 seconds wipe that employee's phone of any data whatsoever that had ever been downloaded through a VPN or downloaded or through an email attachment. And we don't destroy the employees' contacts or their own text messages, and all of their data remains there. But anything that was tagged that A&P owns, literally in 30 seconds, we can wipe it off the phone. And that's very comforting when you're a company that might have a lot of intellectual property and you're worried about it leaving the building. Another neat thing about SharePoint and OneDrive is that we can, unlike a local file server that has no capabilities, when you move up into Azure with OneDrive and SharePoint Online, we can start to classify your data on like what's critically secure and important data to you, and literally make that data not be allowed to be attached to emails, not be allowed to be emailed outside the building. There's all sorts of rules we can set up to control your data. And once these rules are set up, it really locks down what's going to be able to leave your building or leave your business. And for this company that really feels under assault by a much larger competitor, it's comforting to know now that none of their data is going to be leaving the building. And even if an employee does want to leave or gets a better offer and leaves, they're not taking any data with them along the way. So as I mentioned, we can secure your company data and files in the cloud once we've migrated. And here's an example of a screen where we can have a file that can be shared with anyone, or the drop down, or people in your organization, or maybe only people that you've already given access to, or you could actually have named people. And you can also allow editing or not allow editing, as some people can review files but can't change them. And you can even set an expiration date where you could share a file, and that file only is available to the person you shared it with for 30 days, 60 days, whatever. When A&P sends proposals out, we always set an expiration date of 30 days, because if our client hasn't purchased the hardware within 30 days, there's a great chance that the price we quoted will not be valid by the vendor moving forward, because hardware prices change so actively. So this is one example of being able to control the data, where it goes and how it happens in your own business. I think as much as Teams, I really rah-rah Teams and Exchange Online and SharePoint Online, the greatest worry I have for all my prospects right now is security. And Microsoft in their Teams and rather in their Office 365 and their Microsoft 365 subscriptions has a level of IT security that's unmatched and just simply can't be met by AMP using on-premise software. We'd have to hire 100 companies. It costs a fortune to give you the level of security I can give you if you implement Microsoft 365 security. So there's quite literally end-to-end protection for all of your employees, all of their devices, and your applications and your data. It's fully encompassing and very, very powerful. And once it's set up, it's simple to keep it going. I have a couple sad stories recently about security. Years ago when the internet was invented, we would go to all our customers and say, hey, you need to get a firewall. And IT security back then was all about securing the perimeter. Where are the places where data can leave the building? And for the most part, it was the internet connection. So you put a firewall there, and no bad guys could get through that firewall and see any of your corporate data or see any of your employees' PCs. And for years and years and years, it was all about perimeter security. That changed about 2 years ago in a big way. And the bad guys figured out that and what they would do is they would gain access to the PC, your employee's PC, by sending an email, and in that email is malware, and the email is kind of shown in a way where hey, you just your eBay account needs a new user ID and password request, or your credit card, you name it. They have all sorts of ways to come in and trick your employee to give their user ID and password credentials, and then once that happens, the bad guys now have access to the domain, and typically the email has a piece of software in it that gets loaded on their PC or gets loaded on the corporate network, and before you know it, the bad guy has full range of the network. And I have two stories where this has recently happened, and our company has been offering a product called cybersecurity now for a couple of years, where we do our best to lock down our customers technically as best as we can. Nothing's perfect, and unfortunately, if one of your employees does get tricked by one of these phishing scams, there isn't any software that I could implement that stops an employee from typing in their user ID and password to a bad guy. And then once the bad guys got that, that's that, and there's no protection for that. So that's going to be a perpetual challenge that even if you do everything right from a best practice perspective, if your employees aren't doing things right, ultimately some bad guy's going to get on a network. I think it's about 2 years ago, our network operations center called me up, or actually called the on-call engineer up at about 5 a.m. and said, hey, this server just went offline up at one of our customers, and that's really unusual. And the on-call engineer woke up, took the call, and logged into the network, and he saw a skull and crossbones on the server and instantly realized that the bad guys were encrypting files at this corporate office in their data center. This is a large customer for us. They had 65 servers, a couple of hundred employees, and I got a phone call about 15 minutes after the on-call engineer. It's saying that, hey, all the files data's being encrypted right now. I had a customer. What are we going to do? And we have a cybersecurity incident response already written up and planned. We immediately implemented it and turned it on. And in a half an hour, I'm calling the owner up. Hey, meet me at the door to unlock it. I'm bringing a team of engineers up, and we're going to literally shut down your network as quickly as possible, and to try to limit damage. And as it turns out, we did get up there. I had a team with us. We knew how to run this play, and we ran the play, and sure enough, we were able to limit the level of damage from a data encryption perspective. And without paying a single penny in ransomware, we're able to recover that large company's data. It took us about a week and a half to really get everything up and running. During that week and a half, none of their employees could come in. We had all the server and assets down. So, for a company of that size, they were very fortunate that they didn't have to spend $1 million in ransomware, and we were able to recover all their data. But at the same time, to not have all your employees coming into work for a week or so, that's painful and no fun. And of course, we brought in an incident response company to help them figure out after the fact, how did the bad guys get into the network? And we try to. What's interesting is forensically, you can always figure out what broke down, how did they get in. And this is another example of, though, even though they had our cybersecurity bundle in place, and we'd implemented a lot of best practices, unfortunately, an employee had given up their user ID and credentials. They were admin credentials. It ended up being a intern who should not probably have had admin credentials, but had them. And they gave up their credentials to a bad guy, and then that was it. The bad guy owned the network. And, we were able to take care of him and get him out of the woods. But I can tell you that, just imagine if you're a CEO of a couple 100-person company, and I'm sitting down with you and saying, if we can't recover this data, there could literally be $1 million ransomware request here. I'm not sure how long it's going to take me to get the data back. And then, of course, we have to kind of figure out what actually happened here. So that is really not a fun conversation to have. It's definitely not one you want to have. And I can tell you this is happening more and more. I guess because I've been in the industry a long time, I ended up being requested to be on a panel. And we were talking in front of about 600 other MSPs from around the country. And I was on the panel to kind of share that same story I gave you. And obviously it had a happy ending. The guy next to me, also a managed service provider, did not have a happy ending. And not only was his customer compromised, but then the bad guys went after the managed service provider's tools and compromised his tools. And once his tools were compromised, they went out to all of his other customers and encrypted all their files. And as he's telling the story, he literally became teary-eyed, and he's being sued by some of his customers right now, ex-customers. And it's just a sad and unfortunate story, but it's what's happening out there in the industry right now. And I can protect you, AMP can protect you to a certain extent, but if you don't follow our advice and don't do some of the things that are absolutely required as best practices right now, I don't want it to happen, but I don't want to be sitting in front of you saying, let's call up your insurance agents and find out how much money you have on your cybersecurity insurance policy, because we're probably going to need to file a claim. And I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to recover all your data because it's encrypted by the bad guys. So these are not fun conversations. They can be avoided, and the way they can be avoided is by implementing Microsoft's security stack. And there's a whole bunch of things. We won't get into it technically right here, but there's Microsoft calls it zero trust. And they set the software up to assume that every login is a breach, and you have to prove your user identity, and you have to prove the device you're coming from is in fact a valid device. So they have very sophisticated ways of doing it. It's relatively easy for us to turn on, and much like turning on Teams or migrating your Exchange online, or migrating your SharePoint to SharePoint Online. These are one and done projects. Once we set you up, at that point, there's no looking back and worrying about the bad guys. Now, can things happen? Of course, I can't say with 100% certainty that something bad won't happen. But if you follow their zero trust game plan at Microsoft, We can lock you down so well that it won't hassle your users, but it'll make it next to impossible for a bad guy to gain access and control of your network. And the bad guys, they're businessmen. So they're looking for easy places to make money. And if they come across your business and you've implemented everything that Microsoft offers, it's not easy. It's not going to be easy to encrypt any of your data. And the whole idea being, all right, they've got this on, they've got that on, they have all these best practices on. It's obvious that they've done some work here. And the bad guys just move on and find a company that hasn't done all of this. So it's kind of like, I think, almost like deploying an alarm system. We have an alarm system on our office. I have one at my house. And I've got good locks. Of course we lock our doors when we leave the house. But we still got an alarm system for that extra level of, God forbid, there's a fire and we have fire smoke detectors in the house, or God forbid a bad guy breaks in a window or breaks into a door and starts walking around the house, and we have motion detectors in there to detect that, to keep my family safe. So it's exactly the same thing with IT, that, even if we've done everything right from a best practice on-prem, there's still a bunch of stuff we can do to kind of put that alarm system in place to make it next to impossible for the bad guys to gain access. And I don't want to see you on a stage crying, and I don't want to see you face to face having to tell you, hey, it's going to take us a week to get your data back up and running. You might as well let all your employees have a week off. We don't want to have that conversation. And we certainly don't want to have the conversation of, hey, let's call your insurance agent. We're going to need to file a claim on your cyber insurance policy and pay the bad guys to unencrypt your data. One of the things we can do is, once we turn on Microsoft Security, they have something on one of the portals called a secure score. And a secure score is literally a score they give you based on the size of your business and the industry of your business and how much of their security stuff you have turned on. Now, when we meet new prospects with Office 365 or Microsoft 365, they might have a secure score of about, 18 to 22, where the top score might be in the 400 to 500 range. So in other words, they have virtually no security turned on. And once you're through with us and we've implemented Microsoft Security Zero Trust Suite across your business, we're going to get your score up there in that 400 to 500 range and then keep it there. And this is what I mean about having the bad guys knock on your door and look around, and it's kind of like seeing the ADP shield out there in front of your lawn. Like, why bother going to that house when the one next door does not have an alarm system? I'll try that. So this is the idea, and what's nice about a secure score is it allows you as the owner to kind of watch over A&P's shoulders and know that Microsoft is rating you as implementing almost all of their security stuff. You don't typically end up, let's say on this screen, the maximum score is 440. We typically don't get you to 440 because you get to a point where you start to hassle the users and you make it hard for a user to work in the business. But if we can get your score up in that 400 range, 380 range, and have almost everything turned on, you can see the check marks below here. As we turn things on, it'll be very visible for you to see kind of where you are, and you'll also get a score on where your competitors are. And as long as you're a lot higher than them, you're probably in a lot better place than everyone else in your industry. So essentially, once we've turned all these things on, Microsoft calls it the modern workplace. What A&P calls it is you can work anywhere, on any device, at any time. It doesn't matter. On your PC at work, on your laptop at home, or on your cell phone in a car, we're going to give you access to everything of all the applications that the business can run and truly allow you to work from anywhere. And it's freeing, and it improves productivity across the board. So there's enormous business value to making the change to the modern workplace. because you're already paying that monthly bill for your software, you're kind of changing from that capital expense model to the operating expense model, which allows you to deduct it and keep your EBITDA lower. You're never buying another server. You don't have to worry about hardware and software implementations. Your employees don't have to VPN in it and through a firewall anymore to gain access. And essentially what happens here is that we're going to increase employee efficiency and productivity and really make your employees much happier with their IT because it's so much easier to use. So are you getting your money's worth right now? If you're on our webinar right now and you'd like to schedule 30 minutes, it's no obligation to talk to us. Or if you'd like, you could also sign up for our free Microsoft 365 Work From Anywhere assessment. And we can also give you a 1-month free trial of the Microsoft 365 platform. So we hope you'll join us next week. Our next webinar is going to be about moving your file server to Office 365. But if there's anything, you have any questions about your Office 365 or subscription or anything we're talking about here is of interest to you, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you. So I'll take questions right now.